We're back with Wally Smith. Now, Wally spends a lot of time with students out in the field. And unless you've been living under a rock or something, we sort of have this COVID-19 thing going on, which means you really can't get out with students. And, we've got a lot of questions as far as what we're going to do this fall and how all that's going to actually take place and what it's all going to look like. But the fact is, we, in order to give our students the education that we've promised to give them and the education they deserve, we've got to figure out a way to overcome some of these challenges. Wally can't teach them about hellbenders, showing them pictures on the internet. He's got to actually get them into the streams. Wally, tell us a little something about your plan this fall.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I'm kind of waiting to get, some formal guidance. UVA has been really good about giving research guidance about working labs and working the field. So kind of waiting to hear what the formal guidance is going to be there. But the difficulty with us in the field really isn't what happens once we get into the field, because there it's pretty easy, given the work we do, to space people out, make sure that we're not sharing field equipment that could possibly contribute to transmitting anything. It's really getting to and from the field, because if we've got 10 to 12 students in a van, for example, driving 30 minutes to a field site and 30 minutes back, even if somebody is asymptomatic and has the virus, they're not going to know it, and they could potentially spread it to everybody in the van. So I think that's going to be a consideration. I haven't really heard even colleagues at other schools talk about how they're going to handle that yet. And it may be, unfortunately, kind of a situation where we go out with maybe a couple faculty and actually do some of the research and film ourselves, which is not ideal at all. Yeah. And then, show the students what we did, and then hand that data to the students to analyze and to look over. I really hope that doesn't happen and we can figure out a way to get into the field, but that may be the reality that we're looking at least for the fall. It's kind of up in the air right now.
Well, similarly, we have this program at UVA-Wise called the Year in Wise. And for those who don't know anything about it, the University of Virginia, they waitlist about 400 incoming freshmen every year. And those 400 incoming freshmen essentially, for the most part, take a year off and then come to the University of Virginia the next year as a guaranteed admit. A lot of those students don't want to do that. So what we have started doing at WISE is we have started giving them an opportunity to come to WISE and spend their first year, their freshman year in college with us. And we're promising them an Appalachian-centric education, which means getting them out into the community and having them take courses with people like Wally, who are doing research in the local area. And we are hoping to send them back to Charlottesville the next year with something UVA can't give them, and that is a good, solid overview of the Appalachian region. And we believe that if we're able to do that, that they're going to be able to incorporate Appalachia in their classes there, which is going to help us all. It's certainly going to help them 20 or 30 years from now when they are, working somewhere where they have to make decisions. And it's a lot easier to make a decision when you know something about your topic. And we're hoping that we can help them at least become more sensitive and more attuned to what Appalachia is all about. Now, one of the things I want to do is get them out of the classroom. So it's the same kind of challenge you have. You're suggesting we're not going to be able to get them in a van. We're going to have to maybe get them to drive themselves. Going to have to keep social distancing alive. Not going to be able to share certain. I wish Josephine Rodriguez was here. There was a dragonfly that just landed on
cruising around.
It was neat. But we've got all these challenges. You as someone who gets students in the field quite often, how dramatic of an impact is it going to be if you're not able to get them into the field? I mean, how are they going to be prepared if you're not able to get them out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very difficult because really the instructional part of it, really from a data sense, where we're collecting data and they're critically analyzing the data, that's obviously a huge part of what we do. But really, a massive part of field work is the actual experience that they get, that visceral, hands-on experience in the field, the skills that they learn. There's no way you can effectively do that, from a recorded lecture or something from me in the field, or doing a simulation online. So I think that's going to have a huge impact. I think it already has at a lot of research, or a lot of other institutions around the country that have, field stations and summer research programs. I've heard of some of those having to shutter already. So it's going to be a big deal. And going back to what you were mentioning with the UMY is kind of getting the Appalachian experience. Way back when I was a student, we really didn't have a UMY's program, but I went to a school that was in the Appalachian region in North Georgia, and the Foxfire series, the seminal, Appalachian series of books, that school actually helped to manage that program. And we had read some of that stuff when I was a student. That gave me a little bit of experience, but we went up and spent the night as part of one of my classes at the Foxfire Museum and actually got to see some of that stuff hands-on. And even as somebody who grew up in Appalachia, that did so much for me, getting to see that in person, actually getting out in the community and seeing the people that were doing some of those practices that we were reading about. So I think it's going to be tough from, a research perspective, from a community perspective. Not having that visceral, personal experience is really difficult. You can't replicate that, I don't think.
I'd also think that you're, as a scholar and a professional, you're a little worried about sending students to UVA, possibly if you have these students who essentially claim lab experience, and they go on to another professor's lab, and that professor's like, "Have you ever been in a lab before?"
Yeah, exactly.
There was a Wikipedia entry about it because we had COVID-19.
Yeah, watch a YouTube video of someone else in the lab.
For us, I like taking students to Matewan, West Virginia. That's a really nice little day trip. It checks a lot of boxes. It teaches them a lot of stuff, gives them a lot to digest. Things like that are going to be so challenging, particularly if we ask them to drive themselves, because we're talking about a 2-hour drive, something like that.
Oh yeah, and all sorts of liability issues,
Yeah.
that as well, beyond just the logistical stuff also. So it's difficult.
I'm glad other people are making those decisions. It seems fairly insurmountable.
Yeah. That's been what I've been leaning on. I'm like, somebody else will tell me what to do. And I respect that those people are having to grapple with that, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle it.
I want to be in charge when it comes time to decide, where the party's going to be. But I don't want
Exactly.
to I don't want to be in charge when it comes time to decide what we're going to do about COVID-19 contingencies.
Well, and it's so hard because there's no blueprint. It's not like this has happened before, where you can say, well, what did they do during the last pandemic? 20 years ago, there hasn't been one. In so long that there's no real instruction manual for what.
And honestly, kind of getting off on this, we haven't seen one like this in the United States since the flu epidemic in the team. Mm-hmm. And the 19th century was full of them. But, everybody was dying of something at 45 years old in the 19th century. So I don't even know if they paid that much attention. But
yeah, it's really difficult because, field work, we always think about minimizing risk from external factors, things like wildlife or falls or, environmental considerations. And now you've got to juggle all of that. Plus, am I going to get someone else sick? Am I going to get sick from someone else? It's just a different layer of considerations in the field you have to think about. It's tough enough when you're putting 10 people in a river, to sample for hellbenders or something. There's a lot of risk there, but when you add, potentially serious disease on top of that too, it's almost kind of daunting to think about.
Yeah, I'm confident that if we're going to be able to make something work as well as we can make it work, but it's certainly not going to be easy. And thankfully, academics are generally trained as problem solvers. So thankfully, we can make the kinds of decisions, I hope, that'll be right for everybody involved. But you're right. I mean, I guess we're going to be able to tell stories about this for the rest of our lives. Huh? Remember?
Yeah, I think we'll be the guinea pigs. And if there's any silver lining to it, I hate to even say that because there's not really a silver lining, but at least everybody in the country, academic wise, is having to grapple with the same thing.
Yeah.
We're not alone.
We're not alone.
Yeah.
Certainly not alone. Well, Wally, it's been great talking to you. We'll start trickling these things out over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks on Facebook and see what kinds of responses we get.
Sounds
And
great.
if you're particularly, what I may do is I may put you on my list, and maybe about October we'll get back together and we'll try to figure out how we did it and what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah, I may have completely white hair by that point and be broken emotionally, but we'll see.
I'll be
So,
right there with you.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Wally Smith, for joining us.